Jimmy Butler, he's a very interesting player to me.
He's like, oh, shoot, I don't know where to go with the ball because I haven't been able to think.
It was a great series. Game 4 was one of the best games I've ever watched in my entire life.
Now LeBron's a 4-time champion, and Anthony Davis gets his first.
It's unacceptable. So happy when the Astros lost because it would definitely be a 2020 thing.
Yeah, I was impressed by their game. Braden Point, Andre Palat, Nikita Kucherov, that was the best line in the playoffs, no doubt.
Stay undefeated when they face the mighty Cowboys with Garrett Gilbert.
Hey everyone, I'm Jared Sandler, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NBA Opinions of the Week. I'm Kevin, and I'm joined by the man. This is your team, Austin, and they're not doing so well in the standings, and part of that is due to their defense that you mentioned.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Wizards games, unfortunately, this year, and the stats don't lie here. They have the worst defensive rating in NBA history, and there's probably 4 cones at the on the court at every given time, maybe 3 sometimes. But I don't know how the roster was built or configured in this sort of way. And while you can say, oh, they're tanking, oh, they're doing this, oh, they're doing that, I don't necessarily fully agree. I don't think you trade for CJ McCollum if you're tanking. I don't think that's a tanking move, especially because we gave away a younger player for him. I don't really understand why we made some of the moves we did. And while the offense has been okay, it's still 24th. And then if you look at by points per game, an offensive rating by compared to the rest of the league is 28th. So they're the 28th best offense and the 30th ranked defense. And their net rating is negative 15.5. It's one of the worst teams I've ever watched. They can't do much of anything. And it really baffles me how you could build a team this bad even if you're tanking. There's right ways to tank if you're going to do it. You know, I'm not a big supporter of it, Kevin. We've had this conversation before regarding tanking and whether or not teams should do it and the benefits and the negatives. But this isn't even the right way to tank if you're going to do it. The team just looks horrible. They have a terrible, terrible team that I don't know how they built a team this bad. And while the parity in the NBA is at an all-time low, there's a lot of really bad teams and a lot of really good teams this year. I struggle to see how you could build a team this bad. Right now, their best player is Alex Sarr, easily averaging 19 and 9 with 2 blocks. After that, I mean, you could argue McCollum. He's shooting 40% from 3 while averaging 18.6. But when I watch him, he affects the game so negatively defensively that I find it very hard to believe that he's contributing at all positively. He's just been atrocious. And the entire defense has been, but so he's been, I think he has the worst defensive rating. Yeah, he does. He has the worst defensive rating of anybody playing right now. Like the worst defensive in the league, worst defensive rating is CJ McCollum. And I don't know how you improve this team in 1 year with the draft. And if you're not trying to improve the team in 1 year, because I've heard people say like, oh, we're supposed to be a little bit underrated this year when we're just not. And if you look the past couple seasons, it's just the same story every year. It's just we're trying to rebuild, but we don't have. There's no way there's enough. When you're rebuilding, you're supposed to have some players on the roster that could still contribute on a playoff team when you become that. If you look at the Mavs when they were tanking, there was still 4 or 5 players on that Mavs team when they were tanking that they are using when they had Luka, right? When they were a playoff team with Luka, they had when they were tanking. I don't know how many of those guys are on the team right now. I can think of 2, and it's Keyshawn George and Alex Sarr. Outside of them, I don't see any of these teams. Oh, I guess Kispert as well. So I guess 3 players. I could see Kispert as well. But outside of those, I only see 3 players that realistically could be on a competitive team and play minutes. And you need those guys in order to rebuild at all. You could be a bad team as long as you have guys who are going to contribute eventually. But the Wizards just don't have that.
Yeah, when I look at the Wizards, yes, they're a bad team. And Yes, I do believe they're tanking. You can talk about how they're doing it. Part of the CJ McCollum trade to me is the goal could have been you're bringing in CJ McCollum to kind of see what he can do with the guys around him. As to me, they have a lot of young guys, and what the Wizards are doing is seeing what works. Which one of these guys, because in the past drafts, they're drafting guys that have a lot of high potential, but also could fail. And to me, they're trying to see what works out. And so when they're a better team, they can do that. But then another part of the CJ McCollum trade is that you mentioned part of that trade was Jordan Poole and Sadiq Bey, and then a number of 40, the 40th overall pick in the draft. And to me, yes, they did give up Sadiq Bey, but part of that deal with the Wizards and Pelicans was to get off the Jordan Poole contract because this is CJ McCollum's final year with the Wizards compared to the Pelicans still have Jordan Poole until the 2027-28 when he's a free agent. So this gives them a little.
Who are you going to sign? There's no way to sign. And you're not going to get anything for this player. If you trade Jordan Poole for future assets, I get it. Jordan Poole's not a bad player, though. Even though he's been hurt this season, he was still averaging 17 points while playing with the Pelicans. And last year was averaging 20 points with the Wizards, and he finally looked good. Why trade him for nothing? You basically traded him for nothing is what you're arguing.
Well, yeah, I think you traded him for money and to get off the contract because think
teams that should get off contract are not teams that are tanking.
Well, I think they're starting to get ready of, okay, what if we went out and spent a bunch of money, or they make trades to fill that money that they're opening up.
Here's my problem. There's no one on the team good enough to trade. Who wants any of these players? There's not one asset that, okay, you trade Star or trade Keyshawn George. Now you have no good players. Now whoever you traded for is your only capable NBA player. They're so bad that you can't make a trade. Who wants to go to a team that you're by far the best player because everyone else is terrible? There's nobody on the roster that's actually good at basketball besides a couple guys that are good on both sides of the court, that actually contribute on both sides of the court. There's two guys that contribute on both sides of the court in any fashion. And then the other players are, okay, the worst 100-game stretch by plus-minus in NBA history is either Bob Carrington or Bilal Coulibaly. It switches every game. The worst 100-game stretch, plus-minus wise, in NBA history is one of those two players. If you look at the top, 100, it's basically all them from their last 100 games, and then the 100 games before that, and then the 100 games before that, and then the 100 games before that, because the team is that bad. There's no players on the roster. I'm like, oh, I could trade that guy for an asset at least, except for the guys that you wouldn't want to trade, because if you traded them, you would have no players on your roster anymore. If they were to trade Sar and Keyshawn George, they may not win a quarter the rest of the season. Not a game, a quarter the rest of the season. That is how bad the team would be.
Yes, they are bad. They're going to be bad for this year. They're probably going to be bad for the next couple of years. It just depends on them hitting on guys. I could see them with that money created this offseason when CJ McCollum leaves. To me, they're not going to go out sign one guy. Maybe they just sign a bunch of guys and try to see what that roster does. To me, that's what they're opening up for. And then just kind of seeing.
That's not how you leave a tank, though. That's not how you. That's not because you're not even building for the future at that point. You're building not to be the worst team in NBA history.
You can. Is it not the traditional tank? No, but I could see it like you want to be a little bit more competitive, so you bring in role players, and then maybe you trade them. I don't know, but it is a difficult thing to answer. But I do think the CJ McCollum move was to free up cap space in the following years, or quicker than the Jordan Poole contract.
The Wizards found it hard to sign players when they were good and almost made a conference finals. They're not going to be able to sign players now when they're the worst team ever. You could make an argument that they're the worst team in NBA history at this point.
It
I
is
would
a
say
fun
they
argument.
100% are worse than the Pistons were when they lost 26 straight.
But if you look at that Pistons team, it quickly
They had potential players. They had Azar Thompson. They had Cade. They had Jalen Duren. Oh, look, all those players are still good. I can name 2 players again who I think may become that, and that's Sar and Keyshawn George. The rest of the players on the team are just horrible. That team was young and inexperienced. Our team, or the Wizards team, is young. However, the players that are young show no potential for growth. With those Pistons teams, I had faith that eventually that they would come through. And again, they made some good trades. They picked up some good guys. They got back Tobias Harris. They got Duncan Robinson to kind of add to this roster, which is why they're playing so well. But Duncan Robinson's like Corey Kispert. They're very similar players. You could argue who's better, but both are 40% three-point shooters and contribute well offensively without being the best defensive players. But you don't have a Cade. I would say Sarge like Jalen Duren. He can shoot a little bit, he can shoot better, but they're comparatively players. He's also a worse rebounder, but I'd say he's a better defender. But you have your good center. Then Keyshawn George is kind of like Azar Thompson, but you have no Cade, so the team is still horrible. And no one's going to want to come. I guess that's why this draft is so huge. But if you don't hit on this pick, I mean, you're bad for the next 5 years.
Yeah. But it could just be you hit on this pick and then you surround them, try to get better. But either way, they're going to be bad next year and this year and maybe the following years. It just depends on how well they do in their future draft picks.
They haven't been good at drafting. Again, they drafted Johnny Davis and he played, 40 games with the team. It was horrible. They drafted Denny, who's now insane, and decided to trade him away for Bub Carrington, who's horrible. So, and Malcolm Brogdon, who retired. So they can't make any moves of any that are good. When they make a good draft pick, they trade him. When they make a bad draft pick, they play him. And the team just is in a constant spiral of just being some of the worst basketball I've ever watched.
Yep. I don't really have anything else. That's kind of all I have. They're bad, and it's just kind of you got to hit on picks, especially when.
All I'm trying to get at is this
goal.
is not the common life cycle of a bad team. We've seen bad teams get out of it eventually, almost always, in every sport, besides like the Buffalo Sabres. That's really it. Yeah, the Sabres have been bad forever. And even when they seem like they're going to get good, they get bad. But I just don't see a way out for this team in any meaningful time span.
Yeah, it's tough to see it. I think they're really just kind of seeing what works with guys. And it's going to be a tough watch until they start to hit on some picks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's some of the young teams that I see the guys that could build for the future. Even the Pelicans, who are comparatively bad, have Fears, and they have Trey Murphy, and they have Zion, who they could trade if they needed to. They have Jordan Poole, who they could trade if they need to when he gets healthy. But they have assets they could trade for value. Derek Queen is starting to play well. They have young guys that are, I think, have potential of being good. The Wizards, again, have like 3 guys who I think are decent. And then they have CJ, who they can't trade. And they have Chris Middleton, who is old and always hurt. And then you have just terrible players running off the bench.
Yep. That kind of concludes it all. I'll let you close this one out.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please let us know what you guys think about the Wizards. Are they a playoff team at all in the next 10 years? Let us know.